Hello and welcome to Soap Goes to the Oscars. This is Snubbed number 17. I'm recording on November 23rd, 2025. I just finished watching the movie, which was To Be or Not to Be. And that is a 1942 American black comedy film produced and directed by Ernst Lubitsch, starring Carol Lombard and Jack Benny, and featuring Robert Stack, Felix Bressert, Lionel Atwill, Stanley Ridges, and Sig Ruman. The plot concerns a troupe of actors in Nazi-occupied Warsaw who use their abilities at disguise and acting to fool the occupying troops. It was adapted by Lubitsch and Edwin Justice Mayer from the story by Melchior Lengel. To Be or Not to Be was released 1 month after Lombard was killed in an airplane crash. In 1996, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. Cinematography was Rudolph Mattei, edited by Dorothy Spencer, music by Werner R. Heyman, production company Romaine Film Corps, distributed by United Artists. Release dates February 19th, 1942 in Los Angeles and March 6th, 1942 in the United States. The runtime of 99 minutes. I think I talked about it a little bit before, probably when Carol Lombard was in My Man Godfrey, which was another one of the snubbed movies. And she was married to William Powell, who was in that movie as well. I think they were married before that for like 2 years, and then they got divorced. And she married Clark Gable, and I believe she was married to him at the time of her death. She had been traveling on a tour to raise money for the war, and flew to, I can't remember where it was now, I just looked it up, but she was flying home and they crashed in Nevada in the mountains. She insisted on flying so she could get home quicker, and her mother and someone else were with her, and all 22 people on the plane died. But so I was surprised. I'd forgotten it. I think I probably had seen it before, but I had forgotten it. When I was looking at her credits, I was like, oh, this was her last movie. And then, dove back into that story. So that's sad. She was good in this production. Lubitsch had never considered anyone other than Jack Benny for the lead role in the film. He'd even written the character with Benny in mind. Benny, thrilled that a director of Lubitsch's caliber had been thinking of him while writing it, accepted the role immediately. Benny was in a predicament as, strangely enough, his success in the film version of Charlie's Aunt, 1941, did not interest anyone in hiring the actor for their films. For Benny's co-star, the studio and Lubitsch decided on Miriam Hopkins, whose career had been faltering in recent years. The role was designed as a comeback for the veteran actress, but Hopkins and Benny did not get along well, and Hopkins left the production. Lubitsch was left without a leading lady until Carol Lombard, hearing his predicament, asked to be considered. Lombard had never worked with the director and yearned to have an opportunity. Lubitsch agreed, and Lombard was cast. The film also provided Lombard with an opportunity to work with friend Robert Stack, whom she had known since she was a teenager. The film was shot at United Artists, which allowed Lombard to say that she had worked at every major studio in Hollywood. The initial reception of To Be or Not to Be was marked by public apprehension due to its satirical depiction of the Nazis. Reviewers at the time criticized the use of such a serious and palpable threat as a basis for comedy. However, modern-day critics have since come to regard the movie as one of Lubitsch's notable achievements. According to Jack Benny's unfinished memoir, published in 1990, Benny's father initially left the theater in disgust at seeing his son in a Nazi uniform in the film, but Benny eventually convinced him to return. Subsequently, his father not only embraced the film, but watched it 46 times. Same could not be said for all critics. While they generally praised Lombard, some scorned Benny and Lubitsch and found the film to be in bad taste. Bosley Crowther, our favorite of the New York Times, wrote that it was hard to imagine how anyone can take, without batting an eye, a shattering air raid upon Warsaw right after a sequence of farce, or the spectacle of Mr. Benny playing a comedy scene with a Gestapo corpse. Mr. Lubitsch had an odd sense of humor and a tangled script when he made this film. The Philadelphia Inquirer agreed, calling the film a callous, tasteless effort to find fun in the bombing of Warsaw. Some critics were especially offended by Colonel Earhart's line, "Oh yes, I saw him, Tura, in Hamlet once. What he did to Shakespeare, we are now doing to Poland." There's a few more things in there about that. I'm not going to read them all. To Be or Not to Be was nominated for 1 Academy Award, Best Music Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture, and the film is recognized by the American Film Institute in 2000's AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs. The film was remade by 20th Century Fox under the same name, To Be or Not to Be, in 1983. It was directed by Alan Johnson and starred Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. I feel like I've seen that. I'm pretty sure I've seen that. I don't remember much, but and the title of this sounded familiar. Obviously, it's from Shakespeare, but I really don't remember the Mel Brooks version, although I know I've seen it. I'll have to rewatch that. So anyway, I agree with the reception at the time. I found it to be a little weird that, this is in 1940, probably filmed in 41 since it was released in February of 42. Lombard died in January. So it was probably filmed in 41, probably before we entered the war. It is a weird thing to take on. And I get it, it's black comedy, it's satirical. It was very funny, but I gave this 3.5 stars. Not nearly perfect, very funny. It's a very clever script, but the tone of the movie, black comedy, it felt like it swayed wildly back and forth between serious and comedy. The last half of it, maybe half an hour or so, 40 minutes, was like almost pure comedy. And then with like a few moments of seriousness mixed in. So it was like the beginning was kind of like a little bit funny with some serious moments. And then the second half or so was like more funny with a few serious moments. So it was a weird tone, kind of. It just wasn't consistent. And this may be a silly quibble, but they're in Warsaw and everybody either speaks with American or British accent. Even the Germans, there are a few Germans that have a German accent. But then even when the actors are portraying Germans or British, like Jack Benny pretends to be a doctor, and I'm not sure what he's supposed to be. I think maybe he was Polish too. So, but anyway, like then he plays a German at one point and he doesn't try to do any kind of accent. A couple of times he plays Germans and he doesn't try to do any kind of accent. So you can almost get away with it and just assume that they are, but that bothers me that they don't even try. And maybe it's just too much. Benny, maybe he couldn't do a German accent. Maybe he couldn't do a British accent. Same with Robert Stack. So why try Carol Lombard too? When I say it's very clever, there's a part where Benny pretends to be a German, like Colonel Earhart, and he meets with the doctor, who is a Gestapo spy, basically. And so he meets with them, and they're he's got their meet at the theater, and the rest of his troop is like the underground. They're hiding in the other room. And the doctor has taken a list of names that he's going to give to the Gestapo. And he gives it to Benny, thinking he's this colonel. He goes and gives that to his people, but finds out that the doctor also has another copy that he intends to take to Germany with him to the Fuhrer. So his troop, Benny was supposed to kill him, or at least the troop was supposed to kill this doctor. And so when they find out that there's another copy, he's trying to stall him while they figure something out. And he keeps going like they call the colonel concentration camp Earhart. And so he just keeps repeating, oh, so they call me concentration camp Earhart, ha, 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 and laughing. And he keeps doing it over and over because he can't think of a way to stall. Eventually, the doctor leaves, but he does get killed by the troop. But then Benny has to pretend to be the doctor and go meet the real Colonel Earhart. And it's brilliant because he gets to use the lines that the doctor used when he was pretending to be Earhart. And now he gets to use those lines as the doctor to the real Earhart. And the real Earhart does kind of the same thing. So they call me concentration camp Earhart. Ha. So it really was very clever in the way they did a lot of this stuff. It just, but it didn't really, the cleverness of it for me didn't really kick in until the second half. And I think I was a little more focused in the second half. So maybe that's why, but it was, I ended up liking it. I didn't think I was gonna because of the tone at the beginning, but I did like it. It was pretty darn funny. Now, Was it snubbed? I'd say no. So I gave this 3.5. I mean, there were certainly movies that I liked less than this in the this last round of Oscars, but I think one thing I've been thinking about as I move towards the years where there's only going to be 5 movies. I think these years where there was 10 movies, and that's the goal of the current Oscars by allowing 10 movies, is to let movies in that maybe wouldn't have been nominated before, like Barbie or The Dark Knight was one of the reasons they started this, and Wally. I feel like with 10 movies, you could say that there are movies that deserve to be in here more. Like maybe this one deserves to be in the list more than one of these other movies. Maybe it's a better movie, but was it snubbed? It's hard to say because there were 10 movies and there was room for it to get in there. I feel like it's the snubbed thing is going to come more into play when there's only 5 movies, and there's a lot less chance of a movie getting in. So, or maybe it's the reverse. Maybe it is more of a snub when there's 10 movies and this movie didn't get in. I don't know. But do I think this was snubbed? No, not really. I can understand that it, because of the tone and because of the topic. In 1942, a lot of these movies were kind of rah rah pride of America and patriotism and stuff. And this was sort of it. This was that, but it presented in a different way. And I could see why maybe that it didn't get any nominations other than the music. So I can see why it didn't get nominated. I guess I'm saying, but yeah. So I don't think snubbed, but very good. So I will just leave it there. I'll see you next time for the 1943 Oscars.